just take a little bit of time to share it via YouTube. So we'll just let that process. Okay. All right, we should be up and sharing and live, both on Zoom and on YouTube. And we'll just give it a few minutes to see if people join in and see how we do. All right, looks like Janet just joined. Hello, hello, welcome. We'll be getting started in just a minute or two, Janet, but do feel free to put any questions that you might have during this webinar in the chat function. I'm going to be monitoring both the chat on the Zoom page and on the YouTube live stream page that we've got going. So let me know if anything comes up. Hi, Alyssa, welcome. Hi, we've got someone named admin joining in, so I don't think that's part of our admin team, but that might just be your Zoom name, so welcome. Just gonna give it another 30 seconds or so. See if anybody's running late. Welcome, Sophia. Good to see you. Alrighty. So once again, welcome to the Spirits live webinar discussion. We're hopefully here today, we're going to discuss the 3 different levels of Spirits courses and exams that WSET offers, including some of our course options that we offer to prepare our students for those exams, and a little bit of a background about what Spirits are and what you can expect if you are enrolled in one of these WSET courses. So just a brief introduction about myself. My name is Tim Powers, and I'm the Student Services Manager here at Commonwealth Wine School in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I've been working in the industry since 2016. I originally started at a small winery up in the Finger Lakes on Lake Cayuga. and then have kind of bounced around many different aspects of the industry before ending up here at Commonwealth Wine School a little under 2.5 years ago now. So in addition to being one of our student services manager, or being our student services manager, I'm also one of our instructors, and I specialize in our spirits curriculum, and I'm a WSET certified educator in spirits, as well as cider. But I also hold the level 3 wines and level 3 sake certifications as well, just because I really am passionate about the beverage industry. And I think that, you know, there's no such thing as ever stopping learning. And truthfully, what I've learned in my studies in wine and my studies in sake and my studies in cider have only gone on to inform my knowledge of spirits and how they're made. There's a very old joke in the spirits industry that beer brewers and winemakers are quitters because they get their product to fermentation and they end up with a lightly alcoholic beverage. But the real beverage professionals, the distillers, know that there are 2 other steps that we have to take to distill that beverage to a much higher ABV level. So it's everything that I've learned about wines and sake and cider has been a great primer for spirits, but it wasn't until I really was diving into the spirits industry and the production side of things for the spirits industry that it all started to make a little bit more sense to me and everything started to click. So as we're going through this presentation, do absolutely feel free to chime in with any questions that you might have. Because it's a webinar, you can see me, hopefully, but I can't see you. But if you put anything into the chat, which you can pull up and have going on the right side of your screen, I will be able to see those and I will answer every question that I can to the best of my ability. So all of that being said, we are also live on YouTube, where I see that we have some people watching there as well. And I am monitoring that chat as well. But just note that there is about a 15 to 30-second delay between the Zoom video and the YouTube video. So if it seems like I haven't seen your chat, or if it seems like you're maybe a little behind for whatever reason, you will catch up, I promise. But we're just going to kind of be pulling double duty just so hopefully as many people can join in as they would like to. So as with all things WSET and everything that I ever teach, I do, of course, have a little presentation that I made just to keep myself on track and keep myself aware of what's going on. So WSET, which is the Wine and Spirits Education Trust, is a certification organization that's based in the United Kingdom, but is truly one of the few global certifications available across the beverage industry. And so what I really, really love about the WSET organization is not only do their courses cover spirits and beverages made all over the world, but they're also well regarded and held in high esteem around the world as well. So there are other spirits certifications out there, which I'd be more than happy to talk about outside of this webinar, because today we're really going to be diving into the WSET course offerings. And so what is a spirit? Might be a question that you're thinking of. Last week we had our beer webinar, and then in the coming weeks, we're going to be holding one for wines and for sake as well, to cover the other certification courses and exams offered by WSET. But because we're here talking about spirits today, a spirit is not, a disembodied soul in this case, but a spirit is a beverage, an alcoholic beverage that has gone through some sort of processing the raw material, and then it's fermented to anywhere from 7 to 16% ABV before then being distilled, which is the very complicated chemical process that we have been able to do for a couple thousand years now. But very simply, is purposefully trying to select and concentrate individual chemicals or individual compounds within a given liquid. So you can technically distill anything that's liquid, but specifically, when you're going for a spirit, you're going to be distilling a fermented liquid and selecting to concentrate the ethanol, the ethyl alcohol compounds specifically. So that's how we're able to turn a liquid that has 7 to 15% ABV into a liquid that has 40, 50, 60, up to 96% ABV, or alcohol by volume, for a neutral spirit. And so there are multiple different ways that we can go through this distillation process, whether you're using a pot still or multiple combinations of pot stills, column stills, hybrid stills, or some combination therefore of. But that's going to have a very great effect on the resulting spirit that you're creating. And so those are, of course, going to be controlled by rules and regulations, depending on what the spirit is and where the spirit is being produced. Then the final fourth step, once you've finished distilling your liquid, the number of times that you want to or need to, then the fourth step is going to be any post-distillation options. So 9 times out of 10, that's going to include dilution of your highly rectified spirit with water to bring that ABV down to a more appropriate bottling level, typically 40% ABV for most spirits around the world. But could also include oak aging or maturation, filtration, all sorts of, and adding in different blending components as well. So, whether you're adding in different spirits of varying ages, you're adding in a color, a dye, a caramel coloring, or adding in sugar or other flavorings, depending on, again, what style of spirit you're going for, and the rules and regulations surrounding your spirit. So all of these courses, the levels 1, 2, and 3 awards in spirits courses, are all going to be discussing those 4 processes. So processing the raw material, fermentation, distillation, and then post-distillation options. But we're going to be discussing them in a varying degree of detail, depending on which level we're talking about. So I'm just going to pop out of this so I can make sure that I haven't gotten any, or haven't missed any questions. Pardon. Okay, so it looks like we're good. All right, so let's jump back in. So for the WSET Spirits curriculums, we have, similarly to their sake and to their wine curriculums, minus the diploma, we have 3 levels of courses and certifications. So we have the level 1, which is an introduction to spirits. We have level 2, which is more of an intermediate level course, which is spirits looking behind the label. And then we have level 3, which is the advanced level of certification, and is entitled Understanding Spirits, Explaining Style and Quality. So I do want to note that if you are someone who has previously worked in the beverage industry or has previously taken other WSET certifications, and you feel like you don't need the level 1 introductory course, you are more than welcome to jump straight to the level 2, or jump straight to the level 3 if you're feeling really confident. And if you have questions about where you might fall on that spectrum, I definitely encourage you to reach out, and I'd be more than happy to talk it over with you. And I can also provide mock exams for the level 1 and level 2 courses and real exams, so that, if, for example, you take the level 1 mock exam and you score above a passing score without having even taken the course, level 2 might be more appropriate for you. And same for level 2 into level 3. All right. So additionally, a framework that WSET likes to work within for all of their certifications is a tier of the knowledge expected of the student, a tier system for each of these certifications. So again, the 4 steps and how we talk about the 4 steps are going to remain the same, whether you're in the level 1 introductory, level 2 intermediate, or level 3 advanced courses. But we're still going to be talking about processing the raw material, fermentation, distillation, and post-distillation options. But at each level, we're going to have a different focus or framework through which we're viewing this material. So the level 1 certification really focuses on the what. What is the primary ingredient used in the production of bourbon? What is the raw material used in the production of tequila? What is the minimum aging for a VSOP cognac? So we're really more focused on pure information recall, because the level 1 course is quite a lot of material still to take in, especially if you're someone who's new to spirits in general. And something that I always like to note as well, I may be very biased, but I think the level 1 course in spirits is almost more difficult than the level 1 courses in the other certification options, because in the level 1 wines course, for example, which is a fantastic course and really, really wonderful foundational program, you're only worried about one raw material, right? You're only worrying about grapes, and you're only talking about how those grapes are grown and then fermented. However, in the level 1 introduction to spirits, we're talking about grapes, grains, sugarcane, neutral spirits, all sorts. Really, I mean, the sky's the limit. Potato, the raw materials that are used, agave for tequila. We already have quite a wide range. And then, for example, with a cognac or with an Armagnac, a grape brandy spirit, we're not only talking about growing those grapes and how they're grown, and we're talking about how we're fermenting them, but now we're talking about how we distill the resulting wine, and other post-distillation options that we have outside of what normally you might be talking about just in a wine certification course. So if you're someone who really liked the wines curriculum, but are looking to explore a different facet of the beverage industry, I think the spirits curriculum is a really natural shift to make, because you already have 2 of those 4 steps for grape brandy down. And so you have some familiarity with the processing of the raw materials and with the fermentation. It's just tacking on these extra 2 steps now afterwards. Just also a brief note, if you have done the sake curriculums, you would have a greater understanding of the processing the raw materials stage. Because not only, of course, do you ferment the rice to make sake, but there are multiple steps in order to convert the starch into a simple fermentable sugar, glucose. So that's something that then you'd have a little bit of familiarity with when you're discussing processing other starchy raw materials, such as grains or potatoes. So grains typically being barley, corn, wheat, and rye are the main 4 that we discuss. So that's the level 1 course. Again, primarily focusing on what. What are the rules? What are the ingredients? What is the beverage, the resulting beverage or spirit that's being created? Now, at level 2, the intermediate level, spirits looking behind the label, you're going to be looking more at the how and the where these spirits are being made. So as the name would imply, spirits looking behind the label, you do discuss quite a lot of the labeling terms, including geographic designations or points of origin, age designations, ingredient designations that come from these labeling terms. So that's absolutely a key and a vital part of the level 2 course. But you also want to discuss the how of these spirits. How are these spirits being made? So, for example, if in level 1 we are talking about what is the raw material or what is the grain used in the production of bourbon, in level 1 we're looking at what is the material. Level 2, we're going to be asking how do we make a bourbon from the raw material that's being used? How are we processing it? How are we fermenting it? How are we distilling it, so that we have a greater understanding of what the resulting beverage is, what the resulting spirit is, and why? Well, that's giving myself away a little bit, because then the level 3 is where we focus in on that why. So it's not only enough at the advanced level course to know what the spirit is and what the ingredients are, and how it's being made and where it's being made, but this is where we're starting to apply this information. So very specifically, how does or why do the choices that the producer uses to make their resulting spirit affect the resulting spirit? And why might a producer choose different options in the production of their spirit? So how is that going to affect the spirit? What would the resulting spirit be? So you need to know the what and the how from levels 1 and 2 to then explain the why in level 3. Additionally, something that is really focused, I think, to a greater extent, in all 3 of the certifications, but significantly so for the level 3 certification, is discussing the quality of a spirit. So we'll discuss that more when we get to the level 3 course individually. But that is something that, if you're familiar with the level 2 or level 3 wine certifications, is touched on, but in the level 3 spirits course, we really dive into it to a much greater extent. So I'm just gonna, again, take a second, see if I'm missing any comments, if anybody's having any questions. Okay. So still looks like we are doing good. So let's talk about each of these individual courses now to a little bit greater extent. All right, so the first level, again, the beginner level, or the introductory level, is the WSET Level 1 Award in Spirits course. We primarily offer this online, although we are looking to be able to hopefully offer it in person at some point next year, potentially as either a 3-week course or a 1-day intensive. But what's really fantastic about the spirits industry is the availability of spirits is pretty widespread, not only in between different states, but also among different countries. So I think it's quite different than, say, the wines courses, where you do really need to be sure that you're discussing the same producer or the same vintage or things like that. In the spirits industry, a lot of these producers are quite large and quite well distributed nationally and internationally. And just in general, spirits are not made typically in a vintage-minded way. Typically and traditionally, spirits are made with a great level of consistency in mind that is not going to be varying year by year. Now, of course, there are obviously exceptions to this rule, and I've actually had recently an incredible vintage American rye whiskey, where they're making sure that all of their rye are coming from the same plots of land, but different years, and it was outstanding quality. It was really wonderful. But I would say that's the exception and not the norm. And why that is for quite a few different reasons that are discussed in the levels 1, 2, and 3 curriculums. So the level 1 Award in Spirits online course takes place over 5 weeks. We do have it 1 week longer than our award in wines or sake courses that are 4 weeks. And that's, again, just to reflect the slightly wider scope of examinable material at the level 1 level. It is quite a lot, especially if you're someone brand new to spirits. And so when I was building this course, I really wanted to be sure that you had time to go through everything. There are 10 different chapters, and so it also made a little bit more sense in my head to go through 2-ish chapters per week. I thought making someone go through 3 or even more than that in 1 week seemed like an awful lot. So it is structured to be a little bit more approachable, a little bit more extended length of time, length of study. There is a live tasting webinar session, typically in week 2 or week 3 of the online course. And so that's an opportunity for the students to get in touch with me, the instructor, and not only assess through 2 different spirits, so that we can make sure that we're reviewing the systematic approach to tasting grid, which is how WSET has worked to standardize the tasting aspect or the sensory analysis aspect of assessing a spirit, but also to touch base and for me to check in with you, the student, and see how you're doing, if you're having any questions. And also because it's about a third to halfway through the course, is a good opportunity for me to check in on your progress and see if you need to potentially defer the online exam to a later date. Because again, it is a lengthy course. There's a lot of material to be learned, so I understand that for many people, you might need a little bit of time. And that's absolutely okay. I, as the instructor and as a fellow human being, would much rather have you feel comfortable when you're taking the exam. And so anything that I can do to help that's within the WSET guidelines set forth, I'm more than willing to do. On that topic, the exam for the online course is online, so you're able to take it in the comfort of your own home. And it is entirely multiple choice. It is 30 multiple choice questions, and you have 45 minutes in which to complete the exam. And you need to achieve a score of 70% or higher in order to achieve a pass. So I think that's, what, 21 or 22 odd questions? math is hard. But we have an incredibly high pass rate for all of our spirits exams. But the level 1 exam, can be a little tricky because of the breadth of information being covered. And then in terms of availability, we do, here we go, yes. So we do offer the class every month for the online level 1 Award in Spirits course, so that you are able to join in, at any point in the start of each new month. And students are all provided with their own electronic version of the textbook that they can use to review the material and study as they go through and prepare for the exam. Right. And some example mock exam questions. I touched on this a little bit a couple slides ago. But for example, what is the minimum age requirement for spirits used in a VSOP cognac? So cognac being a grape brandy or grape-produced spirit with grapes as the raw material. And VSOP is an aging designation that means it has to have been aged, typically oak-aged, post-distillation for 4 years prior to bottling. So there are multiple different aging designations for cognac and for Armagnac, including VS, which is 2 years, VSOP, which is 4 years, and XO, which is 10 years. And there are more even than that you cover more in the level 2 and level 3 curriculums. But that is a very exemplary question of the level of material that you would need to know for the level 1 exam. So again, what is the minimum age requirement? Remembering that that is our main lens through which we're looking at all of this material and all of this information. And the next one, which grain must constitute at least 51% of a bourbon whiskey? So again, that's a what question. What is the raw material of a bourbon whiskey? And just for your own knowledge, note that it is corn. At least 51% of a bourbon whiskey has to have corn as the raw material. And producers vary from 51% exactly, all the way to pretty high levels, 85, 90% of corn as the raw material. And so how does that affect the bourbon? Or why might a producer choose to use differing levels of corn as the raw material would then be your level 2 or level 3 questions for this same idea, right? So again, looking at how we are changing our perspective of this knowledge as we're going through and learning. Because, I mean, if you don't understand spirits at all, if you've never tried a spirit or looked into a spirit, this can be difficult levels of information. This can be a lot to process. And so I think it's really wonderful that WSET does have, a bit of a pedagogical structure in mind as they're preparing the students for the exams and for, a life in the beverage industry, whether as a beverage industry professional or, just an enthusiast, someone who loves spirits. And then which raw material is used in the production of rum agricole? Again, what is the raw material used? And so rum, you might know, comes from sugarcane traditionally. And rum agricole specifically is made in 2 islands in the Caribbean. And so rum agricole specifically has to be made with sugarcane juice. There are lots of other production steps that can be done to sugarcane juice to turn it into different raw materials for production. But for rum agricole specifically, we're looking at sugarcane juice, non-processed raw material. So how is the liquid used to make a rum processed? Or where is rum agricole being made? It certainly would be a level 2 question. Or why, or what's the effect going to be on the resulting beverage? Would be more of a level 3 question. But again, for the level 1, we're just looking at what is the raw material. We'll talk about the other stuff later. We don't want to overwhelm. All right, and again, just going to check back in, see that I'm not missing any questions that might have come in. And do feel free to send in any questions. I am trying to monitor it as much as I can, but I'm assuming that just means I'm doing a great job presenting and covering all of your questions. All right. So yeah, as I mentioned, upcoming classes, every month we have them online. And so we've got classes starting September 5th, October 1st, November 6th, and December 2nd. And just for your own knowledge, the online exam is scheduled for the Sunday following the last class date. Pardon me, but again, you are able to defer your exam to a later date if you need to do so. All right, and here's an example of the WSET Level 1 systematic approach to tasting grid. And what I really love about WSET is they have all of these published online. So you can just Google Level 1, Level 2, Level 3 systematic approach to tasting grids and download them for free. If you have previously studied a different WSET certification course and are curious, I very much encourage you to dive in and take a look at the other ones because every beverage is a little bit different. And so the systematic approach to tasting grids do change for each one of their beverage options. And they do get more complex as we move through the different levels of certification. So level 1 is definitely the most straightforward. And remember, keep in mind that we are trying to, again, just to find some way to standardize what we're dealing with here so that it's more clear to everyone. Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Erica, for sending that in. Do the courses include any cocktails or mixology in their curriculums? Yes. So the level 1 and level 2 courses do include mixology and the science behind why cocktails work, how to balance out a cocktail, and the different main categories of cocktails, as well as what goes into them. It is, one of the 10 chapters for both level 1 and level 2. So it's not a significant amount. I wouldn't say any of the courses are a mixology class per se. We are really more trying to understand the raw spirits themselves. But absolutely, yes. In levels 1 and 2, we do discuss cocktails and mixology. I will say, however, in level 3, it's not a part of the curriculum. And that's purposefully done for a couple of reasons. One, again, it is an international certification. And so mixology and cocktails do vary greatly on a nation-to-nation and a region-to-region basis. So it'd be really hard to have any sort of standardized information at that advanced level that worked for everyone that isn't already covered to a substantial degree in level 1 and level 2. And 2, there is already so much information in the level 3 course. I love the level 3 course and exam. It's my favorite class that WSET offers. But oh my goodness, you do not want another chapter by the time you get to the end of that class. So yes, there definitely is a level 1 and level 2 coverage of cocktails and mixology. But for the level 3, it's not as important. It's not covered in as much detail. Okay, thank you for submitting that. Let's see if I can go back and unpause my screen share. I might just do this. One moment. Look at that, I promise. Here we go. So yes, kind of, and what I had mentioned a little bit before we dived into cocktails and mixology, again, the SAT grids are really just trying to standardize how we're all talking about spirits. So it is important that you do try and calibrate to what WSET is describing and their language that they're using, particularly for the level 3 tasting exam, which I'll get into more detail in just a bit. But especially for levels 1 and 2, it's just trying to provide a really solid foundation. And I don't know, it's what I always end up defaulting to when I have to do spirits assessments or sensory analysis of spirits, or when I'm judging spirits in competition. It's I think a really strong framework, and so it's one that I fall back on. Okay, all of that was level 2, but I think I just had a question come in, so I'm going to jump on that. Oh, this is a great question as well. what level of course would you recommend for someone who is a bartender or a server? So if someone is a bartender or a server, again, it would depend on how long they've been doing that. So if there's someone who has been in the industry for quite some time, I'd probably recommend that they jump into the level 2 class, as the level 1 class might be a little bit rudimentary or repeating a lot of information that they already know. But if it's someone who is just starting out, maybe as a bar back, or just starting out as a server and is already having to memorize so much about their food menu, like you haven't even had time to look at their beverage menu yet, then I might recommend starting with the level 1, again, depending on their comfort level. If anybody's out there who is curious, again, we've been covering a couple mock exam questions in this presentation, and I'm more than happy to send you full mock exams so that you can gauge your comfort level and your level of knowledge as well before you register for any class. So you do not need to take level 1 before level 2 or level 2 for level 3. So it's entirely up to you. But we'd be more than happy to chat with you and kind of help guide you to which level might be most appropriate. So thank you for submitting that question. That's a brilliant one. All right, so now to discuss the level 2 class. Again, this is more of the how of the beverage industry, of spirits production and style. We have 2 different course options. We have online courses that we offer that run for 6 weeks, or we have in-person course options that run for 8 weeks. The online course does have 4 live webinar sessions throughout the 6 weeks. And that's, again, to discuss course material and to go much more in depth into the tasting aspect of the spirits curriculum. And the in-person course, of course, I guess pun intended, the in-person course does include about anywhere from 3 to 6 spirits assessed each class. So for some of the classes, it's a little bit less than that. And for a couple of the classes, it's a little bit more than that. But we do dilute all of our samples while we're assessing them. So we use half and half to bring the ABV down to a little bit more appropriate and tolerable level while we're assessing the spirit. And remember, for level 1 and level 2, the exam is multiple choice only. So there is no tasting component for the exam. But not only do I think doing tasting in level 1 and 2 is important to build your comfort level for the eventual level 3 exam, should you want to take that, but also I think it's incredibly important to be able to apply the theoretical knowledge that you're learning to a sensory analysis of your spirit, right? Because if you are just sitting and reading about all of these beverages, it's one thing. But if you're able to taste the spirits alongside it and really draw connections to, oh, this is the raw material of this spirit, and these are the aromas and flavors that I get from it because of that raw material. Or, oh, this is the distillation method of this spirit, and I am able to either taste a more characterful or more pronounced intensity or a more neutral intensity for the aromas and flavors, for the intensity thereof, of that spirit, depending on how it's being produced. So we do absolutely focus on the tasting or the sensory analysis component of the class, because I think they just go hand in hand in such a way that it's integral to a complete understanding of the subject material. It's also fun. I don't know. It's being able to, if your homework is assessing spirits, I think we're doing pretty well for ourselves. I don't know. So the level 2 multiple choice exam is 60 minutes long, 1 hour, and 50 questions. And you need to achieve a 55% or higher in order to pass, which is 28 questions. And then they do also have a pass with honors, so either with merit or with distinction, depending on how well you do on the exam. But it can be done either online in the comfort of your own home or in person here in Cambridge on one of our in-person exam dates. That is up to you as long as you let us know, in advance of the exam dates, so that we can update your registration accordingly if need be. So again, our pass rate for level 2, knock on wood, is, I believe, perfect. I don't think we've ever had anyone fail, again, knock on wood. But it is a difficult course, and there is quite a lot of material that's covered. And I think it's incredibly rewarding, though, and a really fun, exciting class to dive into. So some example exam questions or mock exam questions. The Lincoln County process refers to what post-distillation practice. The question could have also been, how does the Lincoln County process affect a resulting spirit? Because the information that we're talking about is the same. It's a filtration process done post-distillation in Tennessee whiskey. So that would be the information that we're being asked to recall for that exam question. And specifically using a specific type of wood, maple wood that's been turned into charcoal. And how does it affect the spirit during filtration? It can remove the charcoal, will remove some of the sulfur compounds in the spirit, resulting in a smoother texture, a smoother mouthfeel, but also a lightened color. It will filter out some of the color-causing pigmentations as well from the oak aging. So it's a really fantastic process, and that's why Tennessee whiskeys tend to look a little bit lighter in color and are known to be a little bit smoother, a little bit lighter on the palate as well. To what ABV, or alcohol by volume, are light mark rums typically distilled? This also could have been how are light mark distilled, or how are light mark rums distilled? And the ABV is very high. They're distilled to 90%, which is very close to becoming a fully neutral spirit. And so these are rums made in the Caribbean that are designed to be lighter, again, in terms of intensity and in terms of flavor. And so by distilling to 90% alcohol by volume, 90% ethanol, we're not going to have as many of those other flavor-causing chemical compounds, such as esters or congeners. And so because we're distilling more purposefully to include the ethanol to the exclusion of those flavor compounds, that's why we're going to end up with a lighter flavored, a lighter aromatic intensity for a light mark rum. And then the heads and tails of the distillation process corresponds to which fractions of the distillate. So this question, I think, might sound a little deceptively difficult, but this is mostly to highlight how does the distillation process take place. And very, very briefly, to condense what's a 2-hour lecture in one of the classes into 30 seconds, as you are boiling the fermented liquid, vapor is rising off, which is comprised of water, as well as ethanol, methanol, butanol, other fusel alcohols, depending on the difference in boiling point. And so when those are distilled, so when those vapors are condensed back into a liquid, depending on the boiling point of those liquids, those compounds, they're going to distill sooner or later than ethanol will, depending on how reactive they are. So the heads are going to be what comes off first. It's the group 1 fractions. Primarily is going to be methanol, which has a very low boiling point, and so therefore boils off first and fastest. And the tails are going to have a lower boiling point than ethanol. A higher boiling point than ethanol, which means that they're going to boil off later than the ethanol. So when we are choosing to make our cuts and we're choosing which liquids coming off the still we're going to use, we're typically going to work to exclude the heads and tails of the distillate. So we want to remove that methanol, we want to remove a lot of those fusel alcohols and leave just the second fraction, the group 2 fractions, which is going to be our ethyl alcohol, our ethanol. So again, how is this distillation working? Well, it's working through purposeful selection and concentration of the desired compound. So I know that may sound a little complicated or a little scary. It really isn't, and we do have plenty of time in all 3 of the levels of certification to discuss that in greater detail. But that's just a quick lowdown run through of some example exam questions for the level 2 course. And for our upcoming classes, we've got an online course starting August 22nd, and we have an in-person course starting October 3rd. And we're most likely going to be offering online and in-person classes starting in January of 2025. So you can either choose to enroll in a class this fall, or hold off until January of 2025, but it's going to be a ton of fun. So hopefully you guys are able to join in. And so here's an example of a level 2 systematic approach to tasting grid. And you can notice just on a brief glance, it's significantly more detailed than the level 1. And actually is going to look very similar to the level 3 grid that's provided. So this is what we're going to be looking at when we're doing a sensory analysis of a level 2 spirit. And then more importantly, taking all of this information and starting to use it to define the quality level of a spirit. So again, this is where the theory and the sensory analysis, the tasting, have to come together, because you need to learn what is expected of each different type or style of spirit, so that you can learn what its typicity is. So when you're assessing a spirit of that spirit family or category, you're able to say, all right, this is either in style of this spirit or out of style for this spirit, and answer why. Oh, well, level 2, it's more how, like what's different. But then the why comes through much, much more in the level 3, which we'll discuss right now. Again, just gonna take a second, make sure that I'm not missing any questions. Oh, it looks like I did get a question. Oh, I just hadn't removed the last question. My apologies. All right, so I think we should be good then. Now let's dive into level 3, which is the advanced course. We currently offer online course options, which are 9 weeks long. But then we can potentially, we're looking to be able to offer in-person course options, which will be 15 weeks long. Hopefully starting in January of 2025 is the goal. But do note, for the level 3 certification, the exam, whether you're taking the course online or in person, must take place in person at our exam facilities here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And that is because there is both a blind tasting and theory exam. And it is very difficult, frankly, to try and organize and coordinate blind tasting exams virtually. And so that is not something that WSET allows us to offer at this time. So I apologize for any difficulties or inconvenience with that. But that is not a Commonwealth of Hawaiian School ruling. That came down from WSET in the UK. So yeah, online course, 9 weeks, in-person course, 15 weeks. It is quite a lengthy course with a lot of material being covered. As I mentioned, we aren't going to be discussing cocktails or mixology in the level 3 curriculum, but we do discuss spirits made from all around the world, including some more lesser known spirits, such as Sotol in Mexico, or Baijiu, Shochu or Soju or Awamori made in East Asia. So Baijiu, China, Soju, Korea, and Shochu or Awamori in Japan, as well as Calvados and Pommeau made in northern France from apples and pears, South African brandy, the different types of pisco and differences in pisco between Chile and Peru, and all sorts of fun material. So again, I don't know of anyone who at the end of the level 3 course was really asking for more information or more details, because it covers quite a lot, in addition to the standard whiskey, grape brandy, gin, tequila, rum, etc. It covers quite a lot of information. The level 3 exam, as I mentioned, does have to be taken in person and includes a sensory analysis blind tasting exam of 2 spirits that you will not know what they are, but you have to accurately describe them and state what their quality level is and why. And then a theory exam written following the tasting exam, which consists of 50 multiple choice questions, followed by 10 short answer questions of increasing length. So if I remember correctly, it's 4 5-mark questions, 6 5-mark questions, 2 10-mark questions, and a 20-mark question, some combination thereof. But the short answer questions are designed to really, again, push that knowledge of the why. So it's not enough to know, say, what are all the compounds that are created by yeast during fermentation. You have to know why and what effect that's going to have on on the resulting spirit that you're choosing to distill. So I know, for example, in the wines courses, we talk about fermentation resulting in alcohol, ethanol or ethyl alcohol, and CO2, carbon dioxide, but it also produces heat, methanol, esters, fatty acids, fusel alcohols, sulfur compounds, all of these compounds that during fermentation are produced at very small levels and very small amounts. So you will never go blind from the methanol in a bottle of wine, hopefully. But when you start distilling and concentrating these different parts of the fermented liquid, now suddenly we do have a risk of having a resulting spirit that has enough methanol in it to make you go blind, or has enough butanol in it, or isoamyl alcohol in it to make you violently ill if you're not careful with your distillation. So this is why moonshine has the myth of moonshine makes you go blind, because non-federal regulated spirits don't have enforced maximums for methanol and fusel alcohol levels, which every spirit that you legally buy in the United States does. And so that's why you're not going to go blind drinking something that's been looked over or protected federally by the TTB. So that is one, I guess, perk of post-prohibition, although we're not going to get on a prohibition diatribe. But yeah, a lot of material, a lot of information covered on the level 3 exam. And for upcoming classes, we have the online class starting on November 18th, running through January 19th, for which the exam date is February 20. Let me double check before I say anything. I believe it's February 24th. I'm just double checking quick. Yes, Monday, February 24th at 6 p.m. But you can also choose to defer your exam to one of our following level 3 exam dates, which we hold every other month. So the following level 3 exam after February will be April 27th, and then some date in June, and some date in August, and some date in October, and some date in December, but we just haven't picked those dates that far off. And again, no shame, no judgment. If you need to defer your exam to a later date, I know I did when I took my exam 2 years ago, year and a half ago now, for the level 3 course, because again, it's a lot of material. It takes time to process. I know I always joke about it, but in level 3, you talk about solid state fermentation and the production of baiju, which is where yeast is fermenting a solid as opposed to fermenting a liquid. And I joke that that took me about 5 weeks just to process that one part of that one chapter. So again, no shame, no judgment if you need to defer your exam for that. And then in person, we have classes hopefully starting in January 2025 that we'll have on the calendar in the coming months. And do note for both the online and in-person exams, or pardon me, online and in-person courses, we do have online tasting sensory analysis sessions, webinars that we run to help students become more comfortable with assessing spirits, become calibrated to our instructors in advance of the exam. And we do hold those before every exam as well. So that range, it's about a week or 2 weeks before the listed exam date, just so that you can really be as prepared as possible before you go into your exam. And so I don't have any mock exam questions for the level 3 because there is no level above level 3. So if you think that you are ready for, if you think the level 1 and level 2 mock exams are too easy for you, or you already know that information, then I would suggest you dive in with level 3 because there isn't a diploma through WSET. There are diplomas for distillation through the International British Brewing and Distillation Livery or Trade Guild, which would be comparable to the WSET diploma in wines, but that is something that is run outside of WSET. So it's unfortunately a little bit outside of the purview of this webinar. And here is the systematic approach to tasting grid for level 3. So again, looking similar to the level 2 tasting grid, but again, just more in greater detail. And so just a brief highlight to focus on the aroma and flavor characteristics. We're looking at those coming from raw material, coming from the processing, so either the treatment of the fermented liquid or the fermentation in and of itself, and then the post-distillation. So all of those notes coming from oak aging and maturation. So those are, again, still looking at those 4 steps that are used to create a spirit: the processing the raw materials, the fermentation, the distillation, and post-distillation options. But now looking at it from the sensory analysis side of things. So again, all of this information should hopefully come together to result in you being a student and an enthusiast or a professional in the spirits industry who feels confident not only in their knowledge of the spirits created around the world, but your knowledge of how they're produced, why they're produced, and being able to explain that to either a guest, a customer, a friend, or anyone who will listen to you. Which, if you're passionate about spirits, which I certainly am, will be anyone, again, who will listen to you. I know my family gets quite tired of me going on diatribes about my different soapboxes in the spirits industry, or my different passions and obsessions that I go through in the spirits industry. And so I am, again, just going to zoom out, take a second to see if we've got any questions in our chat boxes here. And I do just want to go through a couple questions that I know we've received quite often. As you might be thinking through additional questions to please put in the chat. And so previous questions that we've gotten are, do I have to start at level 1? You absolutely do not. You're more than welcome to if you'd like to, but you can also jump to level 2 or level 3 if you'd like. How long do I have to take the exam after your course? Your exam registration lasts for 1 year from the original exam date of your course. So if you sign up for this upcoming fall exam, or fall course, online course, pardon, your exam is scheduled for February of 2025. So you would have until February of 2026 to sit for your exam. I do encourage you to sit for the exam sooner rather than later, as it is a lot of material to try and hold on to over time. But it's also a very difficult exam. So if you want to take the time to really review the material, have fun. More power to you. Additionally, do I have to take the exam? No, you don't. If you would just like to learn about spirits in a level 1, level 2, or level 3 course, you are more than welcome to do so and choose not to take the exam, because I understand that for some people, they're just doing it for the love of the spirits, and do not want or need the sheet of paper, the certificate, and the pin, and that's absolutely okay. But do note, if you do need to update or change your exam, or defer your exam to a later date, you do have to let us know before the exam registration deadline, which for in-person and online exams is typically 3 weeks before the listed exam date. So we really do encourage you to make that decision sooner rather than later if you would like. Another question that we've gotten is, okay, well, I really love bourbon, or I really love single malt Scotch whiskey, or I really love añejo tequila. What if I only want to learn about that specific beverage? Well, all of the WSET courses are designed to cover a wide range of spirits made from a wide range of raw materials. So I will say, if you're only looking to learn about one of these categories, it might be a little overwhelming. But there are other certifications out there that do specialize in individual distilled beverages. But I also am really passionate about it being more important to know a little bit about even beverages that you don't particularly love, because that will only help you speak more articulately and greater understand the spirits that you do love. So the more that you learn about gin or tequila or rum, or brandy, is only going to help you learn more about single malt Scotch or about bourbon American whiskey. And so that'll lead to a greater understanding overall. And I think a more nuanced and a more appreciative view of the beverage industry as a whole as well. And then how will I be able to practice tasting spirits if I take the course online? As we mentioned, the online courses for level 1 and level 2 do include 1 and 4 tasting sessions during that coursework, respectively. And then the level 3 session does have tasting review webinars before all of the exams. And you're invited to all of the ones that take place during your studies. So it's really as many or as few tasting sessions that you would like to attend. Additionally, all of our webinars, including this one, are recorded and posted on our online learning platform, or in the case of this session, on our YouTube page. so you can watch or rewatch those webinar sessions at a later date if you would like. And then just a note for the online courses as well. You do have access to the online course materials for 1 year from the original end date of your course. So if you do end up needing to defer your exam to a later date, you are able to still access the course material for the period of time that you need to in the lead into your exam. So that, hopefully gives everyone a little bit more flexibility. And, even if once you've finished the exam, you want to go back and review the material, you're absolutely able to do that as well. Because my favorite part, especially about some of these ebooks and textbooks for the course, is that they are incredible, incredible resources that I still use on a weekly basis when I'm, have a question or something comes up, because it can be a lot of information to keep stored in your head. But that is going to conclude all of my planned statements for this WSET Spirits webinar. I'm just going to we've got a few minutes left, so if you do have any questions, please feel free to put it on the webinar chat or on the YouTube chat. And I'd be more than happy to dive into that in a little greater detail. But otherwise, I just want to take a minute to say thank you so much for tuning in to listen to me talk about not only one of my favorite things on the planet, spirits, but also WSET in general, and to hopefully shed a little bit of information or a little bit of light, not only on the different courses that are available and the different course options that we offer, but also what an education in spirits would look like in general. I remember when I was moving from wines into spirits, it was very daunting because of the wide range of raw materials, the additional production steps. And so I think making sure that you know what you're signing up for and you're getting yourself into is a really great way to ensure not only success in the course and in the exam, but also, to increase your level of enjoyment. Because at the end of the day, if you're not having fun, if you're not entertained as well as learning when you're going through these classes, then I think I've missed an opportunity as the instructor. So again, thank you all so much. I'm just going to, again, leave it open if people do have questions for the next minute or two. I'll go into greater detail. But yeah, it's something that I've really enjoyed being able to talk about. So again, thank you all so much. Just going to give it another little 30 seconds or so. But I do hope the rest of you enjoy the rest of your day. And again, if you're looking to watch this at a later point, you are more than welcome to watch it on our YouTube channel, where it will be posted for posterity. So you'll be able to review again if you feel like you need to. But I'm going to cut it off there. So again, thank you all so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week. And as always, feel free to reach out to me or to Commonwealth Wine School at either Tim, T-I-M, at Commonwealth Wine School, or info, I-N-F-O, at commonwealthwineschool.com. If you do have any questions or if there's anything else that I can help you with or answer for you. So thank you.